The morning sun cast long shadows across the rugged mountains of Afghanistan's Helmand province. Staff Sergeant Maya Chun adjusted her scope for the 100th time, watching the distant compound through her rifle's optics. The target building sat like a fortress on the opposite mountainside, its walls gleaming white against the brown landscape. For 3 days, 13 different snipers had attempted the same shot. Each one was among the military's finest marksmen, soldiers who could thread a needle at distances that would make civilian shooters weep. Yet one by one, they had failed to eliminate the high-value target holed up in that distant stronghold. The problem wasn't their skill. The problem was physics itself. At 4,000 meters, the shot would break every record in military history. The current longest confirmed sniper kill stood at 3,540 meters, achieved by a Canadian sniper in Iraq. What Maya faced was 460 meters beyond that legendary feat, a distance so extreme that most experts considered it impossible. The target was Ahmad Nazir, a bomb maker whose devices had claimed the lives of dozens of coalition forces. Intelligence had tracked him to this remote compound, but conventional assault was impossible. The building sat atop a sheer cliff, accessible only by a narrow mountain path that was heavily defended. Any approaching force would be cut down long before reaching the summit. Airstrikes were off the table. Nazir kept civilian hostages in the compound, including children from a nearby village. The rules of engagement were crystal clear. No collateral damage would be tolerated. That left only one option: a precision shot from an impossible distance. Maya had earned her reputation as one of the deadliest snipers in the U.S. military through years of training and combat experience. Born in San Francisco to immigrant parents, she had joined the Army at 18, seeking adventure and purpose. Her natural talent with firearms became apparent during basic training, where she consistently outshot instructors with decades of experience. But even Maya understood the enormity of what she faced. At 4,000 meters, a bullet would take nearly 6 seconds to reach its target. In that time, the Earth's rotation would deflect the projectile by several inches. Wind conditions at multiple elevations would push the bullet off course. The target might move, breathe, or simply step aside at the crucial moment. The previous 13 attempts had failed for all these reasons, and more. Sergeant Rodriguez's shot had gone wide by 2 feet, thrown off by an unexpected gust of wind. Corporal Williams had calculated the trajectory perfectly, only to watch his target duck down to pick up a water bottle at the exact moment the bullet arrived. Staff Sergeant Thompson's round had struck the compound's wall, missing the target by mere inches after traveling for nearly 4 miles. Each failure had consequences beyond the mission. Every day, Nazir remained alive. More bombs found their way to roadside positions. More soldiers died. More families received folded flags and bitter condolences. Maya studied the intelligence reports spread across the small table in her makeshift position. Nazir followed a routine, appearing at the compound's eastern window at precisely 0800 hours each morning to survey his territory. He would stand there for exactly 90 seconds, presenting a target window smaller than a dinner plate when viewed through a scope at maximum magnification. The shot itself would require a custom-loaded round traveling at nearly 3 times the speed of sound. Even then, gravity would pull the bullet down by more than 700 feet during its flight. Compensating for that drop while accounting for wind, humidity, temperature, and the target's potential movement demanded calculations that pushed human capability to its absolute limit. Weather conditions had to be perfect. Wind speed below 5 miles per hour across the entire trajectory. Clear visibility with minimal heat shimmer. Stable atmospheric pressure. The window for such conditions lasted maybe an hour each morning, if they were lucky. Maya's spotter, Corporal James Park, was perhaps the only person who believed the shot was possible. The young soldier from Texas had worked with Maya on 17 previous missions, and he had seen her make shots that defied explanation. His job was to read environmental conditions, calculate trajectory adjustments, and provide the precise data Maya needed to place her bullet exactly where it needed to go. The rifle itself was a masterpiece of engineering. The Barrett M82A1, chambered in .50 BMG, had been modified specifically for extreme long-range shooting. A custom barrel provided enhanced accuracy, while specialized optics offered crystal-clear magnification at distances that turned human targets into mere dots. Maya ran her fingers along the rifle's stock, feeling the worn texture where countless hours of training had left their mark. This weapon had never failed her. It had eliminated targets in Iraq, Syria, and across Afghanistan. But it had never been asked to reach across 4 kilometers of hostile terrain to deliver justice to a man who had never seen his death coming. The weight of expectation pressed down like the thin mountain air. 13 failures had created doubt among the command structure. Whispers suggested that the mission was impossible, that resources were being wasted on an attempt that violated the laws of physics. Some recommended abandoning the sniper approach entirely and accepting the risks of a conventional assault. Maya understood their skepticism. What she proposed was less marksmanship than magic. Yet somewhere in the calculations and environmental factors, in the precise alignment of wind and weather and human capability, she sensed possibility. Not certainty, but possibility. The compound stirred to life as dawn approached. Through her scope, Maya could see movement in the windows, shadows passing behind curtains. Nazir would appear soon, presenting the same 90-second window that had defeated 13 of her colleagues. Maya settled into her final shooting position, adjusting her body until everything felt perfectly aligned. Her breathing slowed to a steady rhythm. Her heartbeat, strong and regular, marked time like a metronome. Park whispered wind readings and atmospheric data, his voice barely audible above the mountain silence. For 1,000 meters away, a man who had never heard her name was about to discover that distance was no protection from justice. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, visualizing the bullet's path through space and time, seeing it arc across the impossible distance to find its target. When she opened her eyes again, the crosshairs were steady, and true Maya's breathing created small clouds in the cold mountain air as she studied the ballistics computer one final time. The device, no larger than a smartphone, contained calculations that would have taken hours to complete by hand. Wind speed, humidity, temperature, barometric pressure, even the rotation of the Earth itself. Every variable that could affect a bullet's flight path had been measured and analyzed. Corporal Park lay beside her. I pressed to a powerful spotting scope. His job was to read the environment like a book, interpreting the subtle signs that meant the difference between success and failure. A shift in wind direction, a change in light that might affect visibility, the movement of grass or leaves that revealed air currents invisible to the naked eye. Wind holding steady at 4 miles per hour, left to right, Park whispered. Humidity at 32%. Temperature 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Maya nodded, making microscopic adjustments to her scope. At 4,000 meters, even tiny errors would magnify into massive misses. A single click of adjustment on her scope represented a change of several feet at the target's location. The Barrett rifle weighed 30 pounds, but Maya had trained with it until it felt like an extension of her own body. The weapon's massive .50 caliber rounds packed enough energy to punch through engine blocks, but accuracy at extreme range required perfect harmony between shooter, weapon, and environment. Previous attempts had taught painful lessons about the complexity of ultra-long-range shooting. Sergeant Davis had miscalculated the effect of altitude, placing his shot 3 feet low. The thin mountain air provided less resistance to the bullet, changing its trajectory in ways that seemed counterintuitive. Lieutenant Morrison had failed to account for the Coriolis effect, the way Earth's rotation deflected projectiles over extreme distances. Maya had studied each failure, learning from the mistakes of others. She understood that 13 skilled snipers hadn't failed due to lack of ability. They had failed because the shot pushed beyond the normal limits of human capability, into a realm where perfect conditions had to align with perfect execution. The custom ammunition for this mission had been hand-loaded by the military's best ballisticians. Each round was weighed to the 10th of a grain, ensuring identical ballistic properties. The powder charge had been measured with laboratory precision. Even the bullets themselves had been individually inspected for microscopic flaws that might affect their flight. Through her scope, Maya could see details of the compound that were invisible to normal observation. Solar panels on the roof indicated modern amenities. Laundry hanging from windows suggested civilian presence. Guard positions were marked by the occasional glint of metal or movement in shadows. Nazir's window remained empty, but Maya knew from intelligence reports that he would appear within minutes. The bombmaker followed routines with military precision, perhaps understanding that predictability was often the price of survival in hostile territory. His daily appearance at the eastern window allowed him to survey approaches to the compound while maintaining the illusion of security that distance provided. Park's voice interrupted her thoughts. Target building showing movement. Multiple individuals visible through southern windows. Maya shifted slightly, maintaining her sight picture on the target window. Her body had become a precision instrument, every muscle calibrated for stability. Hours of training had taught her to control even her heartbeat, timing the shot for the natural pause between beats when her body reached perfect stillness. The mathematics of the shot were staggering. The bullet would travel for 5.8 seconds, reaching a maximum height of nearly 700 feet before gravity pulled it back toward Earth. During that flight time, the planet would rotate enough to deflect the projectile by several inches. Atmospheric conditions along the entire trajectory had to remain stable, a requirement that made meteorologists shake their heads in disbelief. Maya's training had prepared her for shots that seemed impossible. She had eliminated targets at 2,000 meters in urban environments, threading bullets between buildings and around obstacles. She had made kills in desert conditions where heat shimmer turned the air into liquid, distorting everything beyond recognition. She had succeeded in mountain environments where thin air and unpredictable winds challenged every assumption about ballistics. But 4,000 meters represented something entirely different. At that distance, she wasn't just fighting physics, she was gambling with it. The spotting scope revealed a figure approaching the target window. Park's voice dropped to barely audible levels. Movement in target area. Individual approaching eastern window. Maya's world contracted to the circle of her rifle scope. Everything outside that narrow field of view ceased to exist. The discomfort of lying motionless for hours, the cold mountain air, the weight of expectation, all of it faded away until only the target remained. Ahmad Nazir appeared in the window, right on schedule. Through the scope's maximum magnification, he looked like a grainy photograph, his features barely distinguishable at the extreme range. But Maya could see enough. The intelligence photos had prepared her for his appearance, his habitual movements, the way he positioned himself when surveying the terrain below. Target acquired, she whispered, though Park already knew. The spotter had shifted to his secondary role, watching for any changes in environmental conditions that might affect the shot. A sudden gust of wind, a shift in light, anything that might compromise the carefully calculated trajectory. Nazir stood in the window exactly as the intelligence reports had predicted. He held a pair of binoculars, scanning the valleys below for any sign of threat. His confidence was obvious even at extreme range, a man who believed himself safe behind distance and elevation. Maya controlled her breathing, letting her heart rate settle into its lowest rhythm. The rifle felt perfectly balanced, its weight distributed across her body in a way that eliminated tremor or movement. Years of training had taught her to become one with the weapon, to eliminate the human variables that could turn precision into chaos. The crosshairs settled on target's center mass. At this range, attempting a headshot would be pure arrogance. The center of Nazir's torso provided the largest target area, though even that represented a zone smaller than a dinner plate when viewed from 4,000 meters away. Maya's finger found the trigger, applying just enough pressure to take up the slack without firing. The Barrett's trigger had been tuned to break at exactly 2 pounds of pressure, but Maya's muscle memory was so precise she could stop just short of that threshold. Park's environmental readings continued in a steady whisper. Wind conditions remained stable. Atmospheric pressure was holding. Temperature variations were minimal. All the variables that could be controlled had been controlled. The only remaining factor was human execution. Maya had made thousands of shots in training and combat, but never one that would rewrite the record books. Never one that would either cement her reputation as the greatest sniper in military history or add her name to the list of those who had attempted the impossible and failed. Through the scope, Nasir continued his routine surveillance, unaware that death was calculating its approach across 4 kilometers of Afghan mountainside. Time seemed to slow as Maya's finger found the trigger's sweet spot. Every sound faded except for her own controlled breathing and the whisper of wind across the mountain ridge. The Barrett rifle had become an extension of her will, 30 pounds of precision engineering focused on a target so distant it challenged the very concept of aim fire. Through her scope, Ahmad Nasir remained motionless at the window, his binoculars scanning the valleys below. The intelligence reports had described this exact moment. 0800 hours, 90 seconds of exposure, the same routine that had allowed 13 previous snipers to line up their shots before environmental factors or human error sent their bullets astray. Park's voice was barely audible beside her. Wind steady at 3.8 miles per hour. No significant changes in atmospheric pressure. Light conditions optimal. Maya felt the familiar zone state that came with extreme range shooting. Her heart rate had dropped to its lowest sustainable rhythm. Her breathing had naturally synchronized with her body's needs. Every muscle from her shoulders to her fingertips existed in perfect tension, providing stability without tremor. The ballistic computer had calculated a trajectory that seemed to defy common sense. To hit a target at 4,000 meters, Maya had to aim nearly 700 feet above Nasir's actual position. The bullet would arc through the sky like a miniature artillery shell before gravity pulled it back toward Earth. During its 5.8-second flight, the projectile would travel fast enough to cross 4 city blocks, yet arrive with enough energy to complete its lethal mission. Maya's crosshairs hovered on empty air far above the target window. To an observer, it would appear she was aiming at the sky itself rather than at a human being. But the scope's ballistic reticle showed the calculated impact point, and Maya trusted the mathematics that had been verified and re-verified by the military's best experts. The rifle's bipod provided rock-steady support, but Maya's body position was equally important. Her left hand gripped the stock with exactly the right pressure, firm enough for control, light enough to avoid inducing tremor. Her cheek rested against the stock at the precise position that aligned her eye with the scope's optical center. Her right shoulder absorbed the weapon's weight without strain. Nasir moved slightly in the window, turning his head to examine something in the compound below. Maya tracked the movement automatically, keeping her sight picture stable. At this range, even small movements by the target could mean the difference between success and failure. If Nasir stepped away from the window during the bullet's flight time, the mission would fail regardless of perfect marksmanship. Maya had visualized this moment hundreds of times during preparation. She had practiced the trigger pull until it became subconscious. She had studied wind patterns and atmospheric conditions until she could read the environment like a book. She had memorized Nasir's routine down to the second, understanding exactly when and how he would present the target opportunity. The previous 13 failures had taught valuable lessons, but they had also added weight to this moment. Each missed shot had increased pressure from command levels. Resources were being questioned. Alternative missions were being planned. Maya understood that she might be the last sniper given this opportunity before military leadership abandoned the precision approach entirely. Park shifted slightly beside her, maintaining observation through his spotting scope while monitoring environmental conditions. His job was to call the shot, to confirm hit or miss, and provide immediate feedback for potential follow-up rounds. At 4,000 meters, Maya would never see the bullet impact through her rifle scope. The distance was too great, the target too small, the time delay too significant. Maya's breathing naturally settled into the rhythm that preceded every shot. Inhale. Pause. Exhale halfway. Pause. During that final pause, when her lungs held exactly the right amount of air to minimize body movement, she would complete the trigger pull. Through the scope, she could see Nazir raise his binoculars again, scanning the approach routes to his compound. The bombmaker had survived this long by being careful, by maintaining distance from his enemies, by never staying exposed longer than necessary. His caution had protected him from conventional threats, but it could not shield him from a bullet traveling faster than sound itself. Maya's trigger finger applied pressure with surgical precision. The Barrett's trigger had been adjusted to break cleanly at exactly 2 pounds of force. Too light, and accidental discharge became a risk. Too heavy, and the additional pressure could disturb the rifle's alignment at the critical moment. The crosshairs remained steady on the calculated impact point. Maya's world had contracted to that small circle of magnified space, everything else fading into irrelevance. The cold mountain air, the discomfort of lying prone for hours, the weight of mission expectations, none of it mattered now. Maya felt the trigger reach its breaking point. In her mind, she could already see the bullet's path, arcing through thin mountain air across an impossible distance. She could visualize it maintaining stability despite crosswinds and atmospheric disturbance. She could see it arriving at the target window with lethal precision. The moment of decision arrived like sunrise. Inevitable, transformative, irreversible. Maya's finger completed its movement with the smooth precision of a master craftsman. The trigger broke cleanly, releasing the firing pin to strike the primer with mechanical certainty. The Barrett rifle erupted with volcanic force. The muzzle blast created a shockwave that scattered loose rocks and debris. The massive .50 caliber round accelerated down the barrel at nearly 3,000 feet per second, spinning with the rifling grooves that would keep it stable throughout its extended flight. Maya rode the recoil like a professional, maintaining her sight picture even as the rifle bucked against her shoulder. The weapon's muzzle brake and recoil-absorbing stock tamed most of the energy, but firing a .50 caliber round was always a violent experience. The bullet disappeared into the distance, invisible to the naked eye as it began its 4,000-meter journey. Maya kept her scope trained on the target area, though she knew the bullet's flight time would make immediate observation impossible. At this range, she would have to trust Park's spotting scope and the mathematics that had guided her aim. Beside her, Park maintained his vigil through the spotting scope, ready to call the shot's impact. His voice would provide the first indication of success or failure, the difference between making history and joining the ranks of those who had attempted the impossible. The bullet continued its flight through the thin mountain air, carrying with it the hopes of an entire mission and the weight of military history. The .50 caliber bullet raced through the Afghan mountain air at 2,850 feet per second, beginning a journey that would take exactly 5.8 seconds to complete. In the span of a few heartbeats, physics and human skill would combine to attempt something that military experts had declared impossible. Maya remained perfectly still behind her rifle, fighting every instinct that demanded she look up from her scope to track the bullet's flight. At 4,000 meters, the projectile was invisible to the naked eye, a tiny piece of metal crossing nearly 2.5 miles of hostile territory. Her job was complete. Now mathematics and ballistics would determine the outcome. Beside her, Corporal Park maintained his watch through the spotting scope, his voice ready to call the impact. The seconds stretched like hours as both soldiers waited for confirmation of hit or miss. In that eternal pause, careers hung in the balance alongside the mission's success. The bullet followed its calculated trajectory with mechanical precision. The custom-loaded round had been crafted specifically for extreme range, its weight and powder charge optimized for maximum accuracy at distances that pushed the boundaries of ballistic science. As it flew, the projectile began its gradual descent, pulled earthward by gravity, while maintaining the forward momentum that would deliver it to its target. Maya's mind tracked the bullet's theoretical progress. After 1 second of flight, it would have traveled nearly 3,000 feet, still climbing toward the apex of its arc. The Earth's rotation was already beginning to affect its path, though the deviation remained measured in mere inches. Wind conditions along the trajectory would either support or challenge the calculated flight path. At the target compound, Ahmad Nazir continued his routine observation, unaware that death approached at supersonic speed. Through his binoculars, he scanned the valley approaches, perhaps noting the positions of his own guards or searching for signs of coalition activity. His confidence in the protection offered by distance and elevation was about to be tested in the most definitive way possible. Park's breathing remained controlled as he watched through his spotting scope. His job required absolute focus, ready to observe and report the bullet's impact within a fraction of a second. At extreme range, even expert spotters could miss the small dust signature or brief muzzle flash that indicated where a shot had landed. 3 seconds into its flight, the bullet reached the highest point of its arc, nearly 700 feet above the target building. From that altitude, the projectile began its final descent, gaining speed as gravity reclaimed it. The thin mountain air offered little resistance, allowing the bullet to maintain velocity that would have been impossible at sea level. Maya felt sweat form despite the cold mountain air. 13 previous attempts had failed for various reasons: wind changes, miscalculations, equipment failures, target movement. Each failure had provided lessons, but also added pressure to subsequent attempts. The weight of those failures pressed down like the thin atmosphere itself. The intelligence reports had indicated that Nazir maintained his window observation for exactly 90 seconds before retreating deeper into the compound. If the timing estimates were correct, the bomb maker should still be visible when the bullet completed its journey. But timing at 4,000 meters involved calculations that pushed human precision to its absolute limits. Park suddenly tensed beside her, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Target still in position. No movement detected. Maya's heart rate remained steady through force of will and years of training. She had learned to control physiological responses during high-stress situations, understanding that elevated heart rate or breathing could affect follow-up shots if they became necessary. At extreme range, even second shots were problematic due to the time required to observe results and make corrections. For seconds into the bullet's flight, environmental factors continued to affect its path. The wind conditions that Park had measured at their position might differ significantly at various altitudes along the trajectory. Atmospheric pressure variations could alter the bullet's ballistic coefficient. Temperature gradients could create vertical air currents that deflected projectiles in unpredictable ways. Maya had studied meteorology as intensively as marksmanship, understanding that extreme-range shooting was as much about reading environmental conditions as it was about trigger control. The best snipers were part marksmen, part scientist, capable of interpreting atmospheric data with the precision of trained meteorologists. The previous failures had demonstrated the complexity of ultra-long-range shooting. Sergeant Martinez had calculated perfectly for known conditions, only to have an unexpected thermal current push his bullet 6 inches off target. Staff Sergeant Kim had compensated correctly for wind, but failed to account for the humidity gradient that existed between her position and the target area. 5 seconds into the bullet's flight, the projectile was descending rapidly toward the target zone. Its velocity remained sufficient to deliver lethal energy, though the extreme range had reduced its impact force compared to closer engagements. At 4,000 meters, shot placement became even more critical than at normal engagement distances. Maya's mind remained focused on the technical aspects of the shot, avoiding emotional investment in the outcome. 13 failures had proven that hope and determination were insufficient against the laws of physics. Success would come from perfect execution of calculated procedures, not from wishful thinking. Park's spotting scope revealed no changes in the target area. Nazir remained at his observation post, following the routine that intelligence had documented over weeks of surveillance. His predictability had made the shot possible, providing the narrow window of opportunity that snipers required for extreme-range engagements. The bullet continued its descent, now traveling at an angle that would bring it into contact with the target window. Air resistance had slowed the projectile somewhat, but its velocity remained supersonic. The custom-loaded round had been designed to maintain stability and energy across extended distances, pushing the boundaries of what conventional ammunition could accomplish. Maya's finger remained on the trigger, ready for a potential follow-up shot, though she knew the practical difficulties involved. At 4,000 meters, observing shot results and making corrections would consume valuable time. If Nazir moved or took cover after the first shot, subsequent opportunities would be extremely limited. The mathematics of extreme-range shooting allowed little margin for error. Maya had aimed for center mass, providing the largest possible target area while still ensuring lethal effect. Even with perfect execution, the shot relied on statistical probability rather than certainty. Environmental factors beyond human control could still defeat the most skillful marksmanship. 6 seconds approached as the bullet completed its final approach to the target area. Park's voice remained silent, waiting for the visual confirmation that would determine whether military history had been made or simply repeated the pattern of previous failures. Maya held her breath, knowing that in seconds she would learn whether 4 months of preparation, calculations, and training had resulted in success or disappointment. At exactly 5.8 seconds after Maya's trigger pull, the .50 caliber bullet completed its impossible journey across 4,000 meters of Afghan mountainside. The projectile struck Ahmad Nazir with devastating precision, ending both his life and his reign of terror in a single, history-making moment. Park's voice broke the mountain silence with professional calm. Confirmed hit. Target down. No movement in target area. Maya maintained her position behind the rifle scope, though her racing pulse betrayed the adrenaline surge that followed successful engagement. Through her optics, she could barely make out the target window at maximum magnification, but Park's confirmation was definitive. The impossible shot had found its mark. The bullet had traveled further than any confirmed sniper kill in military history, breaking the previous record by more than 400 meters. But Maya felt no celebration, only the quiet satisfaction that came with mission completion. 13 previous attempts had failed, each representing skilled snipers who had faced the same physical and environmental challenges. In the target compound, chaos erupted as Nazir's guards discovered their leader's body. Park observed frantic movement through his spotting scope, armed figures rushing between buildings in confusion and panic. The psychological impact of the kill was immediate and obvious. An enemy who had seemed untouchable had been eliminated from an impossible distance. Maya carefully safed her rifle and began the methodical process of equipment breakdown. The Barrett rifle was too valuable to leave behind, and the shooting position would need to be abandoned quickly before enemy forces could organize a response. Park maintained his observation role, watching for immediate threats while Maya prepared for movement. The shot's success would be verified through multiple sources. Intelligence agencies would confirm Nazir's death through intercepted communications and satellite imagery. Military forensics teams would eventually analyze the impact site, though reaching the remote compound would require significant operational effort. Maya understood that her achievement would be classified for years, hidden behind operational security requirements that protected sources and methods. The record might never be officially acknowledged, existing only in classified files that documented the outer limits of human marksmanship capability. But within the sniper community, word would spread through unofficial channels. Instructors at sniper schools would quietly add Maya's achievement to the legendary stories used to inspire new students. Range masters would reference the 4,000-meter shot as proof that impossible distances could be conquered through perfect preparation and flawless execution. Park completed his final observations of the target area before beginning his own equipment breakdown. The spotter's role was equally crucial to the mission's success. Without his environmental readings and target confirmation, even perfect marksmanship would have been insufficient. Maya reflected on the factors that had enabled success where 13 others had failed. Weather conditions had been optimal, providing the stable atmospheric environment required for extreme-range shooting. The target had followed his predictable routine, presenting the narrow window of opportunity that such shots demanded. Equipment had performed flawlessly, with custom ammunition delivering exactly the ballistic performance that calculations had predicted. But ultimately, success had come from the marriage of human skill and technological precision. Maya's years of training had prepared her for shots that challenged conventional understanding of what was possible. Her ability to control physiological responses, read environmental conditions, and execute perfect trigger control had transformed mathematical possibility into lethal reality. The extraction from their mountain position required careful navigation through terrain that offered concealment from potential enemy response. Maya and Park moved with practiced efficiency, their equipment properly secured, and their movement patterns designed to avoid detection. The successful shot would trigger intensive search efforts by enemy forces seeking revenge. As they descended from the shooting position, Maya considered the lives that would be saved by Nazir's death. The bombmaker's devices had claimed dozens of coalition casualties, with more planned before his elimination. Intelligence estimates suggested that his network would require months to reorganize, providing a significant tactical advantage to coalition forces. The mathematical improbability of the shot struck Maya as they moved toward the extraction point. At 4,000 meters, hundreds of variables could have caused failure. A single degree change in wind direction, a minor variation in atmospheric pressure, a slight movement by the target. Any of these factors could have sent the bullet harmlessly into the compound's walls. Park maintained rear security as they moved, his spotting scope now packed but his eyes still scanning for threats. The partnership between sniper and spotter represented one of the military's most effective small unit combinations, capable of projecting lethal force across distances that rendered conventional weapons useless. Maya knew that requests for extreme-range shots would increase following her success. Military planners would see the 4,000-meter kill as proof that previous limitations could be exceeded through proper preparation and execution. She would likely face pressure to attempt even longer shots, pushing beyond the boundaries she had just expanded. The technical details of the shot would be analyzed extensively by ballistics experts and military researchers. The environmental conditions, ammunition specifications, and equipment modifications that enabled success would be documented and studied. Future extreme-range shooting would benefit from the lessons learned during this mission. Maya understood that her achievement represented the culmination of decades of military research into long-range marksmanship. Advances in optics, ballistics, and environmental measurement had made the impossible shot mathematically feasible. Her role had been to transform that theoretical possibility into practical reality. The helicopter extraction point lay several kilometers from their shooting position, requiring careful movement through terrain that could conceal enemy patrols. Maya and Park maintained operational security throughout their movement, understanding that capture would compromise not only their own safety, but also the intelligence sources that had made the mission possible. As the extraction helicopter appeared on the horizon, Maya felt the quiet pride that came with mission accomplishment. She had succeeded where 13 others had failed, not through superior courage, but through the perfect alignment of skill, preparation, and environmental conditions. The impossible shot would stand as testament to the outer limits of human marksmanship capability. The helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust and rotor wash, its crew already prepared for immediate departure. Maya and Park boarded quickly, their equipment secured and their mission complete. As they lifted off from the Afghan mountainside, Maya caught a final glimpse of the distant compound where history had been written with a single, precisely placed bullet. The 4,000-meter shot would remain classified, known only to those who needed to understand its strategic importance. But Maya carried the knowledge that she had pushed human marksmanship beyond previously accepted limits, proving that impossible distances could be conquered through perfect preparation, flawless execution, and unwavering determination. Ahmad Nazir's terror network would struggle to reorganize without their bomb-making expertise. Coalition forces would operate with reduced risk from improvised explosive devices. Most importantly, soldiers who might have died from Nazir's weapons would return safely to their families, saved by a shot that traveled further than anyone thought possible. The impossible had become inevitable through the marriage of human skill and mathematical precision, forever changing the understanding of what a single, perfectly placed bullet could accomplish.